Welcome to Black Man Lab. We are live Monday, April 19th. You say the alternative to one big ass day. I'm sorry, y'all. But we are glad to have you on tonight. We have a great topic tonight, and we have a great panel. Hosting with me tonight, I'm Marty Monaghan, and tonight with me is my brother and fellow Black Man Lab board member, Joe Barker. Joe, how you doing?
All is well, brother. All is well. You know, appreciate the panelists this evening and appreciate the topic. You know, one thing I love about what we do, Marty, is, you know, we had a whole nother topic this evening and we were going to go in a certain direction. But the one thing I like about this brotherhood in our community is when we see a topic that needs to be addressed, we pivot and we do what we need to do, man. So I'm excited about the topic tonight. Some of the young brothers that are going to have questions, and our amazing panelists that can provide some specific direction.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of our panelists tonight will be our general co-host and one of the founders of Black Man Lab, and that's Mawuli Davis. Mawuli will be checking in here in a second. I think he's moving around. But before we get to that and the introduction of our panelists tonight, let me just do what we do every week, which is talk about how we got here. Black Man Lab started a little bit over 4 years ago with Brother Mawuli Davis and three other brothers, members of the great organization of Let Us Make Man, which this weekend is going to have a great session for Let Us Make Man, and I'll let Mawuli talk about that later. But what they did was they got together to discuss different topic matter with their sons. Sometimes our sons have a propensity to not necessarily listen to us that much. They might listen to an uncle, a good friend, a godfather, you name it, but they might not listen to their dad. We've all experienced that as fathers. So that started as just a little get-together of fathers and sons that wound up growing because those sons brought friends into the mix, and it grew to us having over 250 Black men in the space at the Andrew Walter Young YMCA to talk about different subject matter each week. And we'd have subject matter experts just like we do this week to help give our young folks information that they wouldn't normally have. So that's what gets us here today to being Black Man Lab virtually. Hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to do this back in person again. And we're going to work to also be able to have people virtually in the space as well. One of the things that we do every week is we work to get centered. We work to make sure that we are in a space that we are open to taking information. And so what I want to do before we get started is bring Brother Joe back on to help us to get centered. So Joe?
Absolutely, man. One thing I want to ask, I see my big brother, Fred Palm on, and I know, let me just say, all my centering techniques and the little bit that I'm able to do, I learned from him. He's been a very inspiring brother in terms of how he centers himself. Fred, are you available? I see you on, but if you're not available, I'll go ahead and get it started. But just want to check in and see if you were available, Palm.
Yo, I love you, man. I love the lab. I'm in your car with my children, leaving robotics. I'm just
okay, brother.
To learn a little something today.
All right, brother. I got it, man. Appreciate you. Well, thank you, Fred, for joining us. And as always, man, you out there in the community doing your thing. So, yeah, let's get centered right quick. So one of the things that we do on Mondays, whether we were in person or here on the lab, is we just kind of center ourselves to put ourselves in a space to receive the ancestors and receive the wisdom that these brothers are going to be dropping on us tonight, to be open to what these young brothers might be asking so that we can provide guidance. And the way we do that is we just allow all the things that might be bothering us, the Monday morning, the long, not long enough weekend, to just roll off us, to get off us and put ourselves in a space where we can receive and be open. So we do that by taking just a couple of deep breaths. So I would ask everybody, let's take a couple of long breaths, and on the count of three, let's take one. 1, 2, 3. All right. I appreciate that. Everybody. And you just letting that negativity come outside you. You bringing in the spirit of life that's coming into you, the life that these brothers are going to be speaking into us. So let's take one more deep breath on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And release. And appreciate that.
All right, Joe, thank you so much. It's so important for us to be in a space where we are taking in the information. One of the other things that we do every week, we let everybody know that we are in a safe and sacred space. And we also say, hey, if there's any pressure that you've had on you, any problems, anything that you've had like that in the past week, day, month, year, or even in your life, we say, come on and get some of this black man love. And what we do is we put our arms around that brother. You just come up. We don't ask questions. We put our arms around him and let him know that we as black men, one, love you, but then also we can feel your pain at different times, and we can help to take that away from you. So I want to say from here to you all out there, whoever's listening in, we are reaching out and giving you some Black Man love today. The other thing that we do is we always make sure that we are standing on those who came before us, our ancestors, those who did the work well prior to us. So with that, I'm going to ask Brother Mawuli Davis to come back on and see if he can give us some libations for our ancestors. Mawuli?
Peace, brothers. Peace, Black Man Lab. We honor our ancestors. You know, it's done many ways on the continent, in the diaspora, all over the world, wherever African people gather, whether it's in the side of a church, or whether it's in a elay, or it's on a street corner. Brothers be pouring out some of that love for those who passed and made transition. And so we want to just take a moment and we honor those ancestors. And we always start with honoring those ancient ones, the civilization builders, those that started it, you know, that were the first to walk this earth, whose bones are on the continent of Africa. It's undeniable that our roots as a people, as human mankind, womankind, is out of Africa. So we pour for those Nubians from Kemet, from the Sudan, from Songhai, from Mali. We pour for them, and we say Ashe with a strong black fist, Ashe.
Ashe.
We acknowledge those ancestors who were removed from the mother and fatherland, and they found, wherever they found themselves, they rebuilt and they reestablished and they set up very much what we're trying to do, setting up safe and sacred spaces where we can be, right? Where we can just be ourselves without being interrupted, without being attacked. And so they did it in Brazil, they did it in Haiti, they did it in Jamaica, they did it in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. We've been trying to rock that out in Chicago, in Philly, in Atlanta, just rebuilding these spaces. And so for all of those who resisted, we say Ashe.
Ashe.
And then we just call some specific names, like a Ella Baker and a Fannie Lou Hamer, and a Martin Luther King and a Malcolm X and a Betty Shabazz and Coretta Scott King and Kwame Ture, just on this continent. And then when we think about those that organize all over, like a Frantz Fanon, Amilcar Cabral, Steve Biko, all over the world where Africans resisted and organized, we just say Ashe for them.
Hey.
And then we pour for those beautiful ones not yet born, those that will come, that will prayerfully be able to call our names and say there were a group of men that honored themselves, their children, and their ancestors. And we pour for those unborn children. Ashe.
Ashe.
And then just for our political prisoners of war who could not be with their families because they sacrificed so much. Some are still incarcerated, some are still in exile. So we just remember them. Ashe.
Ashe.
And those names we didn't call, whose names we may never know, who left out to just go and ended up not making it home in some swamp or some back road, some alleyway. And their family always wondered what happened. Those names those that perished on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. So we just wanted to lift all of that up and remember them. And we say, Ashe,
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 Ashe. All right. Thank you, Mawuli. Appreciate that, man. That was a libation for the millennials right there, boy. That was powerful, man. Appreciate that. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation. This is an important conversation, especially for us as Black men and our young Black men, because unfortunately it tends to be the group that sees this topic matter more than not, and that is what to do when you get stopped by the police, and what happens. We want to talk about the things that happens and the mind frame and all that occurs. So without going any further into it, I want to make sure that we introduce our panelists. All of our panelists have been on here before and have been a part of the Black Man Lab. Either our brother Miguel Dominguez, attorney Miguel Dominguez, has been a active part of the Black Man Lab as a board member, and of course as a panelist in the past, as well our brother Francys Johnson. Attorney Francys Johnson has been on the Black Man Lab a bunch of times, and I'm happy to call both of these brothers my brother, along with Mawuli, who everybody knows is going to be acting as a panelist tonight as well. So real quick, if I can give Miguel, give a quick introduction of yourself for those who may not know the infamous Miguel Dominguez.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me again as a guest tonight. I'm an attorney here in Georgia, do personal injury, civil rights law, and I'm also, as Brother Marty said, a proud board member of the Black Man Lab, and here to assist in any way I can.
Appreciate you, Miguel. Thank you, brother, and look forward to your commentary. Mawuli.
Yes, sir. So Miguel was being modest, man. He didn't also talk about the fact that he previously worked as a prosecutor, one of those rare breed prosecutors who, in my humble opinion, just tried to do the right thing. And that's what really made us boys and continue to be friends, was that we interacted in that space. And when he saw a dog of a case, if he saw someone's rights were violated by law enforcement, he dumped the case instead of trying to smooth it out, right? And just let it keep rolling. So I think it's very significant that young brothers and sisters who are watching and who are here as well to ask questions, because we have a live audience in this Zoom, some of our young people who will ask us some direct questions, that they know that Miguel prosecuted cases. So he handled some major cases, misdemeanor case, the whole gamut. And so I think from his perspective, it's critically important because he's had to interact in a more, I would say, friendly way with law enforcement as a prosecutor than I have when I practice criminal defense law. So my experience, I practiced criminal defense law for probably over a dozen, maybe 14, 15 years. I keep saying I don't anymore, but Francys keeps reminding me that we have a very serious case together down in Statesboro, Georgia, in a murder case that we believe is a self-defense case. So I still practice. I just don't take on criminal defense cases on a routine basis. So, and then my other practice area is primarily civil rights. So we see the rights of citizens being violated on a daily basis, to the point that today I got a phone call from a family whose brother was killed by law enforcement. And I told him, I don't know if we have the capacity to take on another one right now. That's how sad it is that it happens so often. And you all hear Buddy in the background.
My guy.
Yeah. So I'm gonna let Francys jump in, but I'm looking forward to this conversation and to these questions because we're living in a time where it's always been dangerous for Black people. So let's not sugarcoat this. Our lives have been in danger since we were brought here, and it continues to be.
Francys, do we have you working yet, buddy?
Okay. Listen, my practice areas and really deal with those who are charged with serious felonies under state and federal law and those who have been seriously harmed or killed through the malfeasance of another party. And so that used to be my standard answer. But the more and more we continue to practice in this state of crisis, and that's what we're in. My practice turns particularly on those cases that deserve someone whose interest is the liberation of our people and the justice of the matter. Let me just lay out the crisis for a moment. At the time that the NAACP was created in 1909, there was a man lynched approximately every day, 365, the year the NAACP was founded. That was a crisis then. 50 years before that, the period of time, the end of the Civil War and 1950, that's about 73 years, there were 4,410 lynchings documented by the Equal Justice Initiative, Brian Stevenson's extraordinary project. Since 2015, there have been more than 5,000 deadly encounters with law enforcement and Black men. 5,000. That's more than 1,000 a year. That's 3 times the number of deaths than when the NAACP was founded as a resistance movement against lynchings, and more than the total number of lynchings in all of Jim Crow in the last 5 years. I cannot say this in starker terms, that this is not as if it has always been this way. We are in unparalleled and unprecedented numbers in terms of the death of our people. And we're watching it live and in living color. So the question has always been asked whether the revolution will be televised. I do know our extermination is.
Thank you, Francys. Appreciate that, man. And you know, I could count on you to bring some stark stats to the equation, man. And those, when you hear those numbers, man, it just it's painful. There's no other way to say it. It's just painful. I hate saying thank you for that, but thank you for that, because if we don't think about it and we don't know about it, then we don't think everything's okay. We know more than anybody as Black men, everything is not okay. You know, so,
well, Brother Marty, just there is a point of celebration. I went out and went to court today and made it home. And so as Lucille Clifton said, won't you celebrate with me that today the forces that we'll talk about that are seeking to kill me did not win.
They missed you today. Yeah.
So up to this point, I'm home. And for all of us who've made it home, that should give our families some sigh of relief. That's the kind of crisis we're in, where we don't know if we will make it and our children will make it home when they leave in the morning.
Yeah, and here's the sad thing. What we know now is home isn't necessarily always safe either, you know.
I was about to say, I want to just call his name, Matthew Zadok Williams. Matthew Zadok Williams was a brother who was having a mental health crisis. And everybody seems to want to focus on the first part of the tape, right? So there's the first part of the tape where he's having a crisis and he goes after an officer with a knife, and the entire family and I have all expressed compassion. He didn't injure the officer, but one officer fired a shot. We were clear that had he been hit then, That officer was trying to defend another officer's life. There's just not a whole, but that's just what it is. But when this man makes it into his home, he goes into his house. He's having a crisis. He's talking through the door. And rather than call out a negotiator, and we've seen it happen before, rather than call out a mental health expert to try to talk to him, rather than call his mama who lives 15 minutes from him, they make the decision without any kind of shields or anything where they could have busted in because it's a knife and not a gun. They make the decision to kick his door down and then fire into his home. And I just saw the pictures today. It was blood-stained walls and floors in his home that he as a day trader had purchased with his own money. And so we're not safe in our homes. We think of Breonna Taylor. So this isn't, we want to give these young brothers and sisters some ways to navigate. And I just like to start the conversation with this. Please, let me preface it this way. It is clear that white assailants can murder people and be arrested without injury. We're clear about that. We've seen it a number of times. So I want to preface it. I don't want y'all to think in one bit that, hey, if I just follow what these attorneys from Black Man Lab are talking about, I will be okay. Nah, all we're trying to do is give you some tactics and strategies to try to survive a police encounter. So the first one is this. If you dirty, take the charge. Take the charge. If you dirty, take the charge. What I mean by that, don't run. Just don't. Don't try to drive off on them. Don't try to run. Just take the charge. If you in the game, if you smoking, if you just decided that for whatever you on, don't try to run. Just take the charge. I am begging you, just take the charge. Because what we can do is we can either defend you or we can find somebody else to defend you. But what we can't do is bring you back because they use your running, whether you're in a car or on foot, as a basis to shoot. That's it. Whether it's justified or not, that's not this conversation. We're not talking about, what we're talking about is how to make it home. So take the charge. Your mama may be mad at you. We may be disappointed in you. It may be frustrating. We may be ticked off, but just know that we want to hold you. We want to hug you. And so just don't run. It just ain't worth it, right? And again, be clear. You may not have to run and they still shoot, but let's not give them, let's cut down on the reasons and the basis for them discharging their weapon because they're in fear. And again, it's clear, folks, we saw a white guy in a pickup truck yesterday take off with an officer on the side of his truck going 60 miles an hour. And that man did not get shot. He had an officer on the side of his thing. So I want to be clear, it's not an equal playing field. They're not going to treat you the way they treat white assailants, suspects, or citizens. Knowing that as your fathers, your uncles, your babas, your godfathers, we got to tell you, and knowing this law the way we know it, don't run. That's my first piece, and I'll pass it to another brother.
Let me jump in real quick, Mawuli, because that number one, that speaks volumes, first of all. But let's start at the beginning of it, okay? Whether you're dirty or not, you're driving, it's 12 at night, you're headed home. The lights come on. And I'm posing this to all three of you guys. The lights come on. What are the moves to safety for you as a young Black man? What are the moves to safety? What are the things that we should do to try to mitigate as much as possible that officer's option of putting a bullet in you? And I'll start with you, Miguel.
So for me, you know, and this may sound corny, but, you know, it's really piggybacking on the theme of what Mawuli just said. I think from the onset, the goal, your mindset needs to be right as soon as those lights come on. And what I mean by that is you have to be clear within yourself that from this moment, as the blue lights have turned on, what is the goal? The goal is to get home safely. Whether your rights are going to be violated or what happens during that interaction, the whole goal from the onset needs to be that you are going to get home safely. And so, you know, I would advise that starts from the idea that the person that you may encounter next that comes up to your car, I think we all, and it's terrible that we have this burden, because in reality, it's really not our burden. And I don't want anybody to confuse it as me saying it is our burden, but it's a part of our reality today to get home safely is to just acknowledge within ourselves that the person we're about to interact with may be in fear, whether that's a realistic or a fair fear or not. The reality is that that's what we're encountering. And so a person who is approaching us already in fear is a dangerous person in and of themselves. And so I think starting from the position that I want to arrive at my destination safely, and the individual who is stopping me from doing that is probably already scared. What can I do to make this as least scary to a scary person as possible? And that's quite the task, particularly if you're young. I mean, it's quite the task if you're a grown man. But it's part of what, as people of color, we need to be doing and need to be aware of from the onset.
Yeah, great reply for that, man. And that's, think about that concept, man. We have to be mindful of the fear of the person with the gun, right? The law enforcement agent, the guy who has the gun, who's supposed to be the one that can control a situation the right way. We have to be worried about their fear because it potentially can kill us. That's a tough mindset to have. Brother Francys, how about you, man?
Yeah. So my next one would sort of be in line with that. I want you to know I've been stopped 29 times in my life. 29 times. I have them. I have that knowledge because, you know, I've kept up with it, because each time those blue lights came on, there was a part of me that was terrified. And even the more so than that, I've got sons that I want to see raised to adulthood. And as a lawyer with years of experience, I choose, and I want you to choose, to remember that I do not argue with the police under any circumstances. Should you get into an argument with the police, be as polite and respectful as you can and keep your mouth closed. Don't get into an argument with the police. I'm going to say this one more time on Mary Ann Had Her Little Lamb. Do not get into an argument with the police, period. Arguments are for courts of law later on by people who are trained to make them. Your job is to survive this encounter so that you can add another number to the number of times you have been stopped. We got policy people working on that. There's no reason why I should have been stopped 29 times in my life. We got folks working on that. We got folks who will get you out of jail if you're arrested. We got folks, but we have no one in all of our resources who can bring you back from the dead. So do not get into an argument with the police.
I want to thank you for that, Brother Francys, man. Appreciate you. I want to ask, and I know Mawuli's going to come over and answer that as well. But while y'all are answering that, I want to ask something very specific too. We've had some really great panels this year so far, and part of that has been very educational. It's been very specific. It's been very targeted with some answers. And the question I want to ask is because I'm texting my sons the other day. One of them was driving to Alabama. The other one was driving back from FAMU. And I'm texting them, hey, here's what y'all need to do. I've been in Mawuli seminars. I've done all this talking. And I'm trying to tell them, have your license, insurance, and registration ready, right? And it's funny because I'm like, well, shit, don't. Oh, my bad. I'm not supposed to come in. It was a real moment for me. I'm like, don't put it in the glove compartment because I don't want them to see you reaching across. Don't put it in the center console because I don't want to see them reach down. So I really want some practical instructions. Miguel, you talked about here's, what you do. I would like all of y'all to answer specifically, where should they keep stuff? Where should things be so it's readily accessible so cops ain't coming out with guns drawn to begin with?
Yeah, and let me, before we answer that, to even piggyback on that a little further, like, what are the physical movements that we should be making?
Exactly.
Right? Because we're at that point now where it's like, I've seen this. I've actually felt it myself when I got stopped, where you just freeze. You're like, I'm not doing anything. I'm not moving. I'm not doing anything. Hands on the wheel, But sometimes that doesn't even work out. So what is you all suggestions in reply to that?
So I think this is an interesting part of the conversation because what it requires is that we teach our sons, our children, to get prepared for an event of being pulled over before it ever happens, right? And so we're talking about changing behaviors before, almost like putting on your seatbelt, right? So what I would suggest, probably the safest thing that a young driver could do is to take their license, the registration and the insurance information and put them right in the visor above their head.
Okay.
And so now, as an officer approaches, the only movement that I would say that needs to happen is, number one, put the car in park. Let me back up for a minute. One thing that I advise everyone to do, no matter what age you are, and I've seen this at least facilitate a little kinder interaction, is police officers are getting struck by vehicles all the time around the nation. And I think there is a general consensus among most officers that to the extent that they see you pull over and try to get their physical body out of traffic, that also can go a little ways towards that initial interaction. So number one, pull off of the road to as much as you can so that when they approach, there's at least something in their head that said, this person wants to see me be safe. I don't know that that's going to work in every situation. I'm just saying there's some consensus that I've heard about that from police officers. Secondly, I would say that as soon as you put that car in a position to be pulled, where it's pulled over on the side of the road, go ahead and put that thing in park, and I would turn it off. Take the keys out of the ignition, put the keys on the dashboard, and have your hands on the steering wheel. And as you're doing that, I would go ahead and pull the window down so that you are ready to go. And once that officer comes over and they can see your hands are in plain sight and they, introduce themselves, hopefully tell you what you've done wrong and ask you for your identifying information, you can then tell them, well, it's right here in my visor. Okay. May I reach up and get it? And then you can get it at that time and your hands are always in plain sight. And now you've eliminated this potential hazard, which is what it is to our people, of reaching somewhere within the vehicle where they can allege they couldn't see your hands.
Thank you. That's appreciate that. Appreciate that very much. Brother Johnson, man, you know, I saw you kind of agreeing that, but I want to see your thoughts on that as well, brother.
You know, ultimately, what we're trying to provide is practical tools.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when these encounters become deadly, these folks will lie and do whatever they can to fabricate stories. We all remember what happened in North Charleston with Walter Scott, and that lie would have never been able to happen. That lie, particularly that Walter Scott was a threat to that officer. He was not in a vehicle, but with the cooperation of a black officer who places the gun beside Walter Scott's body, and then in reports backs up the white officer's story. So this doesn't matter whether it's a black officer or a white officer. This is about police, and I think it's important to remember that. I echo what he said. I keep my license and registration in my wallet. And the National Insurance Consumer Bureau, which is, I think, their trade organization for insurance companies, suggests you do that and that you don't keep those things in your glove compartment because of theft. But I'm asking you not to keep them in there because that reaching and movement, has been used as a subterfuge for too many deaths. So I keep mine in my wallet. And again, I ask for permission to be able to reach behind me and pull my wallet out. You can always take your wallet out when you get in the vehicle and just put it up on the dash.
Okay. Thank you, man.
And
just so much great direction. Go ahead, Mawuli. Go ahead, brother.
Before my computer dies.
Okay.
And I just think, everything that's being said, and here's the thing. The practical is this, and I want these young brothers. I see Brother Nigel, Darius, Chase, are all on, and I want them to be able to ask us some questions. But here's the thing. The practical situation is that our young people are mad and pissed off as hell about all of these killings. And it's like when they get ready to get pulled over, they mad for getting pulled over. And, they on some, man, it's some BS, woo, woo, woo. And I'm not, it's just hard because it's the warrior in us, right? That just, It's like, I'm not going to let y'all pull me over and punk me out and jeopardize my life. And so I'm going to assert. And so we just saying, if y'all want to get down and bang against the system, get with us in Black Man Lab and let us make man. And I was with some young organizers today for Justice for Georgia, and they got, Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, Black Lives Matter. There's a whole bunch of organizations if you want to bang against the system. But banging against the system is not the move on the side of a freaking road. That's not where that goes down. You don't get to be an organizer on the side of a road when you get pulled over. That ain't it. So if you want to bang with us, because we're going to bang against the system because it's broken or it's really how it's supposed to be for them and it's killing us. So we're going to keep our hands moving against the system, but be clear. Don't try to act like when you get pulled over, that's the time to be the revolutionary. You got an open invitation. We need you. We need you right now. We got a whole bunch of organizations you can join and rock with us right now. Right. And that will be, you can stand, you can do court watch, you can stand toe-to-toe, face-to-face with the police in protest. I mean, there's a whole bunch if you want to confront them. But that getting pulled over is not the time to confront them, especially when you got 4 of your boys in the car and 2 of them got weed on them.
Right.
That's just not, I'm just saying.
Go ahead, Miguel.
Molly said something real important there. It's the warrior in us that wants to push back. And what I would suggest to all my guys on this call and all the young warriors that have that spirit, what I suggest to you is to just where I started. Some of these police officers, there's no reason for you to try to show them what kind of warrior you are, because they're not even they're already terrified of you. And sometimes being a real warrior, being a real gangster, somebody from the street, real recognizes real. And you can look at somebody and know for a fact, if it were a one-on-one situation, you would absolutely tear this person to shreds. But you knowing that, you decide, you make a conscious decision. I'm not about to engage this cat. He's not even worth my time. He's already terrified of me. And so what I would suggest to you is that sometimes the warrior spirit should be sort of having you chuckle inside, knowing that, you know what, I'm going to stay calm. I'm going to stay respectful, because this cat that has a gun in his hand, who clearly is terrified of me, when he was in high school, this cat was probably getting kicked in the pants and probably getting heard for his lunch money. Now he done went to the police academy, and it's a whole new individual, right? But you know who you are, and you have to be comfortable within yourself to say, you know what? I do not have to prove to this punk right here what I'm made of, because I'm built by my daddy, by my community, and I don't have anything to prove to this dude right here. So you just stay calm, you stay respectful, you answer the questions, you identify yourself, and you get home safely. And if he pushes that line and he clearly violates your rights and disrespects you to a point where it needs to be rectified, then you call guys like me, Mawuli, and Francys, and others who will come together to fight that fight for you.
And I appreciate both of you all emphasizing that, man. I mean, that's so critical that they understand not to fight right there. When you fight right there, right, wrong, or indifferent, you're making them the judge, jury, and executioner that they want to be to begin with. So I appreciate that perspective, man. And whether you're riding dirty, because one of my mentees asked me, well, what if I'm not dirty? What if I did nothing wrong? Well, then take that charge, take the ticket, take whatever, and have your day in court. We got these powerful brothers on here that we can call and show your innocence. But there's nothing that's going to be accomplished, whether you're right or wrong, that day right there. Take it and have your day in court. I want to bring Marty back in because we got some very powerful questions from Facebook, and I know that Marty wanted to ask a couple things, but we appreciate y'all specifics on this so far, and continue to be specific with your guidance, man, because it's folks listening.
Yeah.
We also had Darius and Nigel. I don't know if, and
Sure.
Chase, I don't know if they had questions. They're in the Zoom live studio. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if they want to pop on at any point, we'll pull them in. One of the things that I was thinking about was that, when we see these different interactions happen, and this is actually somebody from Facebook asked this same question. You think about Lando Castile, right? Who said, I have a gun in the car, and yet he still wound up dead, right? What do you think is the best way to approach that? If you have, a gun in the car, or something else like that, a knife, whatever, a weapon, what do you think is the best way to approach that when you get stopped? Should we announce that on the front end? I'll ask you guys, you're the experts.
So sure. So go ahead.
Go ahead, Francys.
I was just going to start with what the law is in Georgia, that if you have a weapon that is concealed on your person or in the vehicle, in a glove compartment, in your center console, underneath the seat, then you have a duty under the law to acknowledge the presence of that concealed weapon in the car or on your person when you encounter law enforcement. So that's a front end conversation. When the officer approaches the window, he may ask questions or whatever. Your first response after you give him your license and your registration, which you retrieve from your wallet on your dash or from the visor above, is I want you to know that I am a concealed carry permit holder and there is a concealed carry weapon in the vehicle. What is what is your instruction to me? Ask the officer what he wants you to do. Okay? And then you pause and be quiet and let him answer. And if you're not clear, then before you take your hand off that steering wheel where you've placed it, then you're going to ask him again. I don't understand what your instructions were. It sounded as if you were giving me 2 instructions. What do you want me to do right now? Okay? And if that conversation doesn't get beyond that, you stay right there with your hands in sight until you get a clear instruction as to what you need to do next. And I would just be just that clear about it. Okay?
Now, I'm going to add something to what Francys just said. It's a little more extreme. He may not agree with me. I don't see any circumstance in any circumstance that I can personally tell you that once I have done what Francys just said, and I have identified for an officer that I have a concealed weapon in the vehicle, where if his response, and I think Francys is right to say, what would you like me to do next, officer, right? If the response from the officer were, go ahead and hand me the weapon, I don't see any circumstance, and Francys may disagree, I see he's nodding, so I think he agrees with me. Given what our people are going through, given the Castile situation, I don't see any circumstances in which I put my hands on that firearm or weapon under any circumstances, whether the officer is telling me it's okay to do it or not.
That's right.
Now the question becomes for our young people, well, what the hell are you supposed to do if he tells you, go ahead and hand me the firearm? I think that the only thing, and as I'm thinking through this right now, the only thing I could possibly tell the officer is, look, I'm not comfortable with that, primarily for my safety, and I'm not going to take my hands off the steering wheel. And if you want to retrieve the weapon, I'm going to tell you exactly where it is. But I ask that you maybe pull me out of here and put me somewhere secure where there's no question that I'm not around the firearm. And then you can get it and you can make it safe, do whatever you want. But I've actually had that circumstance happen to me where I was pulled over in DeKalb County by an officer. He was of Asian descent, and not that matters. It can happen with any, but the bottom line is I did what I was taught to do, which was to hand the officer both my driver's license and my concealed carry license at the same time.
Yep.
He asked me to identify myself so that it is very clear I am telling you, here's who I am. There's a firearm in the vehicle, but guess what? I'm licensed to have it, so I'm not a felon. Here's this man looked at it, he asked me about it, and then he told me to reach for it. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And we got into an argument about that. But ultimately, I wouldn't budge, and he had to go around on the other side of the car, reach where I told him it was, and I popped the trunk, and he put it in the trunk. But I wasn't going to reach for that firearm under any circumstance. He argued with me for about 5 minutes about it. And I didn't want to argue with him, but I stayed calm and I told him, look, I'm not going to do that. I'm keep my hands right here for both of our safety. And that's just what it was. Eventually he went and got it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mawuli.
Yeah, I just would say this. Keep in mind, man, because a number of us, and if you ask, most of us, everybody on this call has a family member who has been or is law enforcement, right? We all do. And man, they regular people, right? Like my cats, I got a cousin our best boys, they regular people. They chose to do law enforcement, and they're trying to get to the crib too, right? So, you know, it's not, and I know my guys, they're not out here like, hey man, let me see what I can, because they too real for that. So it's some real dudes out here that are law enforcement who are just like, I'm trying to get to the crib, you know, don't put me in a situation where I got to make a decision because I'm going to decide to preserve my own life. I think, truth be told, that's everybody. And so I think we just have to be clear that go into it with a couple of mindsets. One of them is, hey, this dude is trying to get home, or this young lady is trying to get home. Two, they may be afraid. They don't know me. They don't know whether you're in school, they don't know what you on, right? You just, you know, and three, I don't know what kind of day they've been having and what's been going on. So I think we gotta, you know, I just want us to come into these interactions and just be mindful so that we can move in a way that, again, it's all about self-preservation. You know, that's my whole thing is we want to be able to deal with whatever issues may come of the police encounter without you getting injured or shot or what have you. And we could deal with it from there. But I love to answer any other, for us to answer some of these questions, man, because time is ticking and moving. And
as it always is when we have one of these great topics, man. Hey, Nigel, are you there, brother?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, you had a question, my man?
Yes, I do. I recently purchased a firearm and I recently applied for my gun license. And I got into this conversation with my dad where he was telling me that I need to not ride with it all the time or to, you know, keep it under the seat or something like that. And I wanted to know, I wanted to ask, what's some steps if I have it on my waist while I'm driving and I'm pulled over? How should I go about that situation?
Sure, I'll take that question.
Okay.
So there's no such thing as a gun permit. You do not need a permit to own a firearm in Georgia or in a period. I'll just stop at Georgia. What there is a concealed carry permit. And you need a concealed carry permit to have a gun in a concealed location on your person or in your vehicle. Okay? You do not need a permit at all to have a gun in your home, to have a gun in your car, or to have a gun on your person. It just has to be open and notorious. It's got to be, you got to carry it.
Explain that, Francis. Unpack that so we commoners understand exactly what you said.
You can't have it. You can't have it. It's got to be open and notorious where anyone looking at you can observe that you have a firearm.
Okay.
Open carry. That's what you can do, and that's legal. That's when you see folks walking around with their gun in their hand. If you have a holster on your side, then that's fine. But if you wear a coat like I do and that coat covers it, it's a concealed weapon now.
Okay.
If you have a book bag and that book bag covers it, it's a concealed weapon. If you put it down in your book bag, it's a concealed weapon. And you shouldn't do that. And so if you have a firearm, if you put it on the floorboard of your vehicle, that's probably the safest place to have it. But if you stick it in the glove compartment or your center console, you now have a concealed weapon. And you should just be aware of that. And so that's one part. Secondly, in terms of your weapon, here's what you need to do if you bought a firearm. You need to go to a firearm safety class. And there are lots of great organizations, including the National Association for African American Gun Owners, NAGA. I know that's a problematic acronym, but it is what it is. If you don't want to go to NAGA, my nigga, then go somewhere and get it. I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist.
I was waiting for it.
I couldn't resist. If Marty knew I couldn't resist. Go somewhere and get some training on how to use that weapon, because it's just a hunk of metal if you really don't know how to use it, especially you know, in the kind of self-defense manners that I know that you purchase it for. But brother, I understand why you feel like you need to be armed, and we're really in a war. So I want you to be safe with it. Okay, I love you, brother.
I love you too, man. Thank you.
That because he specifically said he was told to put it under his seat. That's a bad idea. That was the only thing you said that kind of just stood out to me. Number one, as Brother Francis just said, it becomes concealed at that point. Number two, just have it, if you ever felt like you needed to reach under there, it just puts you in a compromising position with the officer. To me, and I don't like you driving with it in your waistband either, because if you get pulled over, now you have to tell him, like, I have a firearm within reach. It just puts you in a bad spot to even give him the firearm. So to me, my practice is to keep it in the passenger seat right next to me, open and obvious. And so if that officer, for example, that pulled me over, he was able to easily reach in and get it and do whatever he wanted with it, and I didn't have to touch it. I kept my hands over here out the window, the driver's side window, and so that alleviated that.
So Miguel, you just said something I want to unpack right quick, and I want to make sure I understand and our crowds that are listening understand. You said that if it's on your person like that or within reach, you have to announce it if you are pulled over. I want you to repeat that, because that's part of, hey, what do I do? You know, how do I advise I have a firearm I'm carrying with me, or do I even have to? So what I just heard you say is if it's within reach, you have to announce it.
Absolutely, and Francis was the first one to touch on that.
Okay.
The law is what it is, and at that point, you have a responsibility to let that law enforcement officer know that you are armed. There's a firearm in the vehicle, and if it were on my person in my waist, I'd definitely be letting them know. You don't want him to find that out, you know, for the first time upon either seeing it himself and being startled by it, or asking you to come out of the vehicle and somehow he feels it for the first time, or it drops, God forbid. You know, I think you play the role as someone who is in the right and doing the right thing. And so the right thing to do is just to go ahead and announce it.
Got it.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is, as it relates to having a weapon on you, is that you need to be very, very clear there is a weapon, and at that, no quick movements, nothing where they are going to be able to say, what you doing? You know, because at the end of the day, that what you're doing is that startle, and next thing you know, you're in a situation where you're catching a hot one. We don't want to see that. And Nigel, make sure that you are doing everything that you need to do properly with your weapon, so that it is not something that can put you in a position you can ask any kind of questions that are going to bring you to a point, especially as a young brother. You know, you are targeted more than anybody. So I want you to, be very, very clear with that, and be trained and everything, especially because I know that you carried some precious cargo at different times.
That's right. Mari, on the weapon piece, there are some places where open carry is expressly prohibited. You cannot open carry at any public school or college or university in this state, nor at any courthouse in this state. So those are two areas that are expressly prohibited by law. And of course, you don't need to have a concealed carry permit or any permit, regardless if your gun is unloaded. But an unloaded gun is a paperweight, and most people, after you got any safety training, would know that. So you are most likely going to have your gun loaded. So just know that.
Appreciate that.
A simple perspective, a simple point that you made, Brother Johnson. I just want to reiterate. You said it. I just want to say it one more time because it is definitely something that could easily happen. You know, open carry. If you're not out inside of one of those institutions, you could do it. You have a holster on with your firearm in it. You throw that book bag on, it covers it up. It is now a concealed weapon. That is a great heads up, man. That is something that can so simply be done. And these brothers, I won't even say young brothers, these brothers might not even understand that they now have a concealed weapon and could be handled accordingly if, you know, they take the book bag off and, you know, now it's exposed, but it was previously concealed. So I appreciate that because that gives a whole nother level of understanding to what you do and how you do it.
Right.
Absolutely. Hey, I got one more quick question that I know occurs, especially nowadays with social media and everything. What are you all's thoughts on videoing these interactions? Because to me, sometimes I think that adds a level of anger, maybe, for lack of a better word, with the officers. But at the same time, it also offers us, you know, evidence of the BS that can occur. What are you all's thoughts?
So there are a couple of applications that have been pushed around mobile justice, for example, which was an initiative of the ACLU. And you can download some of these applications for your phone that will record encounters with police that are activated hands-free. So there are some apps for that and some pretty good ones as well. I would remind you of what Miguel said earlier. You have to watch your movements, and unnecessary movements, including trying to fidget with a phone to turn on video, can be misconstrued. I mean, I don't have to tell you. I'm just, as we're going through this conversation, I'm thinking about all the different cases all the way back to December of 2003, my first case involving Kenneth Walker, of all the ways that your actions and things in your hand can be misconstrued as deadly weapons, including your cell phone. So be careful about that. But if you're operating your car in compliance with Georgia law anyway, you should be hands-free, and you should have a device that holds your phone. And if you have one of these mobile apps that's voice activated, you can do that safely.
We should be lifting his name up, man. People forget the brother out of Columbus, Georgia.
That's right.
Yeah.
Kenneth Walker.
Matter of fact, I believe he was a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity.
December the 10th, 2003 at 9:06. The facts just flood back to me. Shot twice in the head.
Marty, you actually bring up a very good point, and I, in fact, had the honor and privilege of helping out with the legal team with a young man. I won't say his name right now because that case is still pending, but, you know, one of the things in that case that we dealt with was his fear and having to make a decision as to whether he wanted to record this interaction or not, and how that ultimately fueled the level of anger or frustration that you just mentioned you thought might be possible with a law enforcement officer. That's exactly what happened in that situation. And so I think you're right on the money in that while recording can be very helpful these days, it needs to be secondary to your own personal safety. And reaching for a phone, many of our young people have not lived past that decision, right? Because an officer ended up saying, it appeared to them it was a weapon or whatever the case may be. So, but that leads me to where I was going to go with the recording, is that I was hoping at some point you would ask me, well, what can everybody else be doing, right? When they're not involved in the actual police encounter. And I think that, as we have seen even today with the George Floyd trial, it can be very effective for us as a people, as a community, to decide that we are going to record these things, that we are going to get involved and document these interactions. And so that's where the recording comes in for me, as a responsibility of the collective community to do that, not necessarily the young person who's on the side of the road.
But yeah. I want to be clear. If you're in the vehicle trying to record inside of that vehicle, could be a danger. So just be aware of that. If you're in the vehicle, they're telling you, and just some other practical things. If you're asked to exit the vehicle, you have to exit the vehicle. No matter how minor the infraction may be, you have to exit the vehicle. Why? Because the officer can say it's for officer safety. They want to get you out of the vehicle, and they can pat you down. So I just want everybody to understand that, again, all of the statistics show that Black people are more likely to be pulled over, more likely to be asked to exit the vehicle, more likely to be patted down, more likely to be placed in handcuffs than their white counterparts. That's a reality. So, you don't even have to say, if I was white, you wouldn't be doing this to me. You're probably right. They wouldn't. But if they're doing it to you, it's still the law, right? It's just the law has been applied very, very differently to us and other folk. That's just what it is. And so the law says if they tell you get out, you have to get out. You need to comply. They can pat you down. They can even put you in handcuffs and detain you, right? Because it all falls under officer safety. The other piece that I think is significant that y'all should consider is they don't have to tell you why they're pulling you over. And I've had situations where people are like, I'm not going nowhere until you tell me why you pulled me over. And then boom, 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 it's an escalation. So there is not a case that I have been able to find that says if an officer pulls you over, they have to tell you why they pulled you over. No, they can give you a ticket. They can give you a warning. They can even give you a verbal warning and say, I thought you were weaving within your lane, and so I pulled you over. Or I thought you were following too close to the car in front of you, and I wanted to check and make sure you were straight. I got something from a minister at one of our local churches here, and they pulled him over for driving 65, and the speed limit was 70.
Yeah.
And I wanted to check and make sure you were okay. He said, okay, because I'm driving 5 miles under the speed limit? Yeah. So, it's just, we have to know the space and time that we're living in. We need you. We really need all of us to try to be above ground and available for this continued struggle for our liberation and equity and justice in this country. And being a martyr is one thing, but being a soldier is what we need.
Well, the reality, Mawuli, is that if you're getting killed on the side of the road because you chose to, buck against and do all these different things against with somebody who doesn't have your best interest per se, it has in front of you, you're not being a martyr. We're just losing you. We're just losing you, and if you survive that encounter, like we all have, I'm sure everybody on this panel, I could tell stories. I've been on the pavement in downtown Chicago, face down with my arms behind me, and I did nothing wrong, you know. But I survived it, I lived through it. We've all been through these things. We're here to do this work. We're here to continue to do the work to try to help our people. If I had argued and fought and done whatever, I surely would have wound up, not in a good situation, either dead or majorly injured, and not been able to do what I'm doing today. And that goes for all of us. So that's the real, warrior mentality. And that's the real martyrdom, being able to live another day. So I got one more question. We're way up against the clock. I had one question from Facebook that I want to make sure we get out there, which is, what is legal for people to ask officers when they approach the car? What info do they have to give, and what is their right to ask or not? So when a cop approaches a car, what can we, or what can somebody who's being pulled over ask? And I just saw just last night something on Facebook where a lady get pulled over and she went off on the cops. Fortunately, she lived to tell about it. He was like, I want your badge number. I want your station number. And she was just going off. And she said, I'm going to report you to such and such. And all they did was pull her over. But I want to, what did you all say?
No, you don't get to ask questions. You get to respond to their questions and get home. And that's it. I don't want anybody to be confused at all. You don't get to do that. What we want you home. And so what you are required if you're operating a motor vehicle is to provide your driver's license. And if you do not have a driver's license, do not drive an automobile in this state. Okay, if your license is suspended, don't drive an automobile in this state. Okay, if you don't have your license on your person, don't drive an automobile in this state. You are required to give them your driver's license. And you can say this, and this is the best advice. My grandfather lived through a whole lot. He died 104 3 years ago, and he wouldn't have made it through all that he made it through, but he used his wisdom. He said, you can say anything to a white man, to a black police officer as well, if you preface it with saying, with all due respect. So if they want to get into asking you questions about where you're going, where you're coming from, whose car is this, all that's provided on the registration. And you can simply say, sir, with all due respect, ma'am, with all due respect, I do not want to answer any additional questions. With all due respect. Right? And you get home, because the badge number and all of that stuff is on the citation. You can get that later.
I agree. And there's a couple of things that we haven't touched on that I think we can't have this topic and not drive a truck through it. Mawuli mentioned never running. I would add to that, never resisting arrest. I mean, ultimately, look, if these folks, right or wrong, have now placed you in handcuffs or are trying to place you in handcuffs, there is nothing more to really argue about that situation. They are either within the law and they're making the right decision, or they're completely wrong. But it's going to take a judge or at least a supervisor above them to make that decision. So at the point where you now start resisting that decision because you think they are not within their right to place you under arrest, you are now giving them a whole nother charge. It's called obstruction, right? And so now, to the extent that they didn't have it, now they do have you, right? So, and it's such an unsafe situation to resist. I don't think there's ever a situation, but for maybe being in a situation like our fallen brother, George Floyd, who is at the cusp of losing his life, right? To just do something to struggle to make sure you can breathe. But outside of that, you should never be resisting. If they're going to put the handcuffs on you, let it happen. Let them put you safely in the back of their car.
And we could probably have this discussion for a whole nother hour.
Absolutely.
Because it is super impactful on our lives as Black men. And those of us that have sons and daughters that are, younger, that could be out there in the world driving, and we worry about them. I just had this conversation with my youngest daughter that, I want to know when you're getting home. I'm not going to go to sleep until I know you're home. Those are the things that we have on our mind all the time, because we know that there are so many different things out there that could possibly affect their lives in a negative way. And that is, our normal society stuff. And then on top of that, we have those that are supposed to be protecting us, kind of looking at us with a side eye all the time, that could lead to, and to your point, Miguel, their fear leading to our death. Those are the things that we could talk about. Unfortunately, so much has happened over time. Do you want to jump in?
I know we got a stop. I think everything that Francys and Miguel have said, I think, I just want people to know that, Francys, he said he's been stopped some 20-something times. Miguel, I'm sure, has had his share of stops, both in the Bronx and, New York and here this way. And I've had the same in Chicago. So I just want these young brothers and sisters who are listening to know that we're not just talking about this from a purely legalese lawyer standpoint, but it's from practical experience. It's from having cousins and nephews and sons, and you just don't want to put yourself, we just, like we've been saying, we need you. So we're coming from a very holistic situation because, man, I have my dearest cousins, like a brother to me, who's an officer in Chicago, and was trying to make an arrest, man, and was assaulted, by an assailant, man. When I saw the picture of my cousin in that hospital room, man, in his uniform, blood all over his face and a neck brace, man, I broke down, because I just thought, man, he could have got taken out of here. He was trying to do his job, so I don't want anybody to think it's this is an easy conversation to have just because we're lawyers. We live this life, and so I just want us to really lean into the need for us to keep talking to our young people every day, when they get ready to go out, and make sure that they're clear and we're clear. And then we just need to keep organizing to change the way policing is done in America. And we need the young brothers and sisters to be a part of that effort to change this system, because it is how it is as it relates to us. And it'll continue to be until we make it do otherwise.
Right.
Absolutely. And, I want to make sure that we acknowledge your brother, Francys. He's posted in our Zoom chat that Joe is going to put on Facebook, the 10 rules of survival if stopped by police. So look for that on Facebook.
Yeah, I just posted it. It's a great article. He sent me the link. Francys sent me the link, and I just posted it. Thank you, Francys.
Awesome. Thank you again, Francys.
Marty.
Go ahead, Miguel.
I want to make sure that as we sat here and pretty much collectively said, look, be respectful, stay calm, be cooperative, identify yourself, answer the questions that you're being asked. I also want to say that stops at the place, or it could stop based on your rights at the place where they start asking to search your vehicle. Okay.
Yes.
You have the right. Okay. We would have failed tonight if we don't at least say to you, at the moment that you have provided the information, you've done what they asked you to do, and now it transitions into the officer telling you he'd like to search your vehicle. There's a reason why he's asking you for permission to do that. He's not allowed to do it without your permission unless he's going to somehow articulate to a judge later on that he, for some reason, based on him being able to smell something or see something illegal, that he had the right to go in there. But nevertheless, if you're asked if you consent to a search of your vehicle, I think 99.9% of the time, the answer is no.
With all due respect.
With all due respect, you may not search my vehicle. Now, if they do it anyway, just step to the side and just articulate again respectfully, I am not consenting to a search, but that does not mean physically resist or get in.
Right.
That doesn't mean any of that. It just means you are saying to them verbally, I do not consent to a search. What they do with that after, please don't fight that out there. Let us for you.
And just save all of the talk, the hotel talk. I know my rights and all of that. You don't have to say any of that. This is not a time for you to defend anything about you. This is a time for you to survive. And I want you to understand this is about survival.
Yes.
Survival. This is no different than our previous iterations of escaping a plantation, of avoiding capture. This is the same. We're in the same position that we've always been in over the last 400 years, and that is moving towards our liberation. And so this is a practical course because we want to see you alive, and that's it.
That's it.
And Francis always has a way of putting things in words and perspective that's just always interesting. Save your hotep talk. Man, listen, we can continue to talk about this subject because it's so intricate and there's so many different iterations of it.
Marty,
yes.
As I prepare to leave, I've had to think about, even tonight, we've got a meeting with the GBI director tomorrow as attorneys. And I always think about, should I get on the road tonight or wait to go in the morning? And a part of that is because I don't want to be bothered out there tonight as I try to drive from South Georgia to Atlanta. And I wish I could say once I made it to Atlanta, I'll be okay, because that's supposed to be Wakanda. We are safe nowhere. We are safe nowhere. And so, we talked about Kenneth Walker. That was my first case. If you go to Columbus, there is a band, like a amphitheater they have built there. And there is a unity tree that they planted. It's a live oak, which is the state tree of Georgia. And there is, and I saw this, there is a great seal of Georgia there with this quote to Kenneth Walker's memory. And I didn't participate in the planting of that unity tree, even though I was with the NAACP and regional director at the time, because I was so angry. When I think about that seal, on the seal of the state of Georgia are 3 words: moderation, wisdom, and justice. And then there is a soldier with a sword drawn. And there's a 4th word. These words don't just come from the seal, they come from Plato's Republic, that says these are the 4 virtues of a good ordered city. These are the 4 virtues for a good ordered person and a good ordered man, if you will: wisdom, justice, moderation, and the unspoken virtue of courage. It takes courage to survive. It takes courage to understand the power dynamic. It takes courage to fight in the ways that we're asking you to fight. And I know that seems like compromise. And I know some of you turned it off because you wanted to hear more revolutionary talk from us. But we can't raise an army if all of our soldiers are in the grave. And I'd rather you be a living person than have a live oak planted in your memory. So listen to these words.
Man, on that note,
Yeah.
Those are powerful words and poignant words. On that note, it is crucial. It's important, and you name all the other words that you want to name. That we stay together. That we are pulling our folks that are coming behind us, our young folks, forward, so that they can better fight and better do the work going to be the liberation of our people. So I say that we have to stay united and we have to stay here. Dead folks can't do the work. So we have to be mindful of that. With that, I want us to go ahead and close out as we talk about us being united, as we talk about us being linked together. I'm going to have Mawuli come on and end us as we do every week with a link in this chain. Mawuli, if you could.
Yeah, we want to close out with Mama and Jerry. And there is work when you transition to another plane. We like for you to stay on this plane, but we know that those forces that make transition do bring us and protect us and watch over us. But we need to be on this plane as long as we can to add our physical force and soul force to this struggle. So with that, we close by saying, I am a link in this chain.
I am a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
I am a link in this chain.
I'm a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
We are links in this chain.
We are links in this chain.
And we won't break here.
And we won't break here.
Ashe.
Thank you, brothers. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark, our amazing
as
producer.
Always,
Mark Lawson.
Mark, thank you for all your work behind the scenes, brother. Our young brothers that joined us tonight, thank you for being here. Our brother Fred Parham showed up at the end. And so glad to see you, brother Fred.
My dude.
So we're going to keep pushing, y'all. We're going to keep doing this work. We're going to keep staying safe and stay united, man, and stay linked, man. So till next week, we love you and thank you.
Love you, brothers.
Appreciate you, road, Francys. Stay strong, Joe, Marty.
Call me, Francys, immediately, if not sooner.